Hi everybody, my name is Vanessa Vass. I am going to be the incoming VP of Comms for your Austin ILEA chapter. But today I'd like to introduce Leslie LaSorsa. Leslie LaSorsa, CSEP, has over 15 years of experience in the event industry as the General Manager of Crave Catering. She is a native of Chicago, grew up in Houston, and made her way to Austin to attend the University of Texas, earning a bachelor's degree in accounting. Leslie became an auditor for PwC and earned her CPA. She then went on to hold various corporate accounting positions all over the US before making her way back to Austin and joining Crave. Leslie has been a leader in the events community in Austin, having held board positions on ILEA for 6 terms, ending with the role of president. So everyone, please help me in welcoming Leslie.
Yay! Howdy, y'all. Well, I'm so glad that this Zoom meeting, or this actually it was going to be a power hour, was scheduled so efficiently by Crystalline back in August, I think, of last year, and I think we thought it would be a face-to-face, probably something fabulous, but then it turned into this whole COVID conversation. So we're really glad that y'all are on the call, and it's very poignant because all of the caterers in Austin, well, not all of them, but a lot of us that are good friends in the community, we all have been talking for the last about 6 weeks or so. We always talk, but we really started having conversations and jumped on several phone calls. So we've actually got responses to almost all of y'all's questions. But just so you know, so folks like Royal Fig, Austin Catering, Contigo, Catering of the Twist, Word of Mouth, several others, let's see, Pink Avocado, Peach Tortilla, I think I've named everybody. So 8 to 10 of us have been having conversations for the last 6 to 8 weeks, and we actually came up with a caterer's promise, as well as a document that we're going to have all of our logos on, so that everybody understands what we are all promising to our clients. And in addition, we have a document that's attached to it that is what we are asking for from our venues, and then what are we asking for from our planners and clients. So that's my beginning statement. You all will be able to get a copy of this, so we're going to share this freely. We're just finishing up with getting it pretty. Let me see, I'm trying to find my cursor here so I can, hello. Okay, here we go. So, you know, catering has definitely changed a little bit in the last 3 months, from not having any catering to many of us pivoting to being like curbside folks and trying to keep our doors open, to now we're planning on how we're reopening. Several of the caterers that I just mentioned have actually started having catered events, and they are sharing their experiences with us. And then we're actually going to be having one of our first catered events this weekend. So we're super excited and can't wait to experience what all of our other friends have been saying that they've been experiencing. I'm going to preface my my comments right now with what has been shared amongst that group of folks that I just mentioned, and also some other places that we communicate with other caterers across the country, the International Caterers Association, or ICA. I'm also part of the Leading Caterers of America, and we've been having conversations since literally mid-March, when I was actually at CaterSource, and we were having LCA meetings, and we were watching everything cancel minute by minute, and everybody was on their phones, just flipping through their phones, watching all their events cancel. But from all of these different communication groups, the experiences that people are starting to see is that the clients and the guests are not so excited about the things that we believe and we are being told that we should be doing to help keep ourselves safe, our team safe, as well as the guests safe. So they just want to get going and get partying. That's the beginning part of it. So with that being said, catering does look a little bit differently. All of the caterers that we have been speaking to are saying a lot of the same things, which is We're going to alter the way we're going to have buffets and food stations and grazing stations, and how we're going to handle beverage stations and bars. And so there's a lot of changes that we're all trying to adapt to. And hopefully that the experience will be one that the client will appreciate that we're doing. Many times they are not so appreciative. Let's start from the very top. The visual that folks are not necessarily excited about is that we will be wearing masks. All caterers and staff and bartenders will be masked and gloved. And that's per guidelines, and that's what all of that group of caterers here in Austin have said, that that's, you know, what we want to do to keep everything safe. Primarily our team safe. I mean, we can't continue to operate. We can't make sure that our events are safe if we are not keeping ourselves healthy. And it's been shown that that's the biggest thing that can help keep us safe. So gloving and masking, periodic breaks to sanitize hands, and then maintaining, you know, social distance as much as possible during the service of an event. So with that being said, I'm not going to go through everything that's on our caterer's promise. I mean, if you've read anything about what the governor and the, you know, the city, state and local folks have been saying, we're going to be doing all of those things. Everything that you think that you're supposed to be experiencing in a restaurant and you're seeing at a restaurant, that's what we're going to be doing as well. So the separation of tables and the number of folks at a table and that sort of thing, we're going to be working with our planners and our venues and our clients to do all of those things as well. In the spirit of trying to get everybody's questions answered, I was actually literally just going to go through and try to address some of the questions as just to make sure that we get them up front, and then that way y'all will have time to ask more questions, because I think that's where the best understandings come from. And also I've got Kristen Stevens on the line from Austin Catering. I've got Kristen Stacy from Royal Fig on the line. And so you gals, you pipe in if I'm messing anything up, okay? Louise, you had a question about whether catering companies will provide safe handling equipment. Can you clarify what you mean by that? Louise, are you there?
Louise might have popped off.
Okay, that's fine. We'll go on to another one, because I didn't know exactly what it meant by safe handling equipment. And he said, or will it be a separate rental from a different company? So I wasn't quite sure what he meant by that. Lori, you had a question. Is Lori on? Yeah, you are.
Lori is.
How do we go above and beyond for a safe experience for our guests and team? Girl, you just go for it. I mean, you know, everything that we're putting in our Austin, the Caterer's Promise, I think is what is baseline for creating that safe experience. But making it cool and interesting and pretty, I think that's the next challenge. So for example, I think a lot of us have talked about like how to have, instead of having a grazing table where you have a charcuterie or you have things out on a station where you want your guests to go interact with the food. We've all kind of decided that that's kind of not going to be happening. But then how can you take that and transition it so that you still have a fun guest experience? And that's where the creativity of each caterer comes into play. I think many of us have decided that we're going to, you know, definitely step away from having guests be able to touch food, touch utensils. So one way that we've decided, and in communication with our clients, we've gone through all of our clients' events and talked with all of our clients, and we have, you know, things where we have charcuteries or cheese and fruit or what have you. We're turning them into either small little paddles to be paired with wine, or into a small plate. I think Chris and Stacey also talked about, like, from an appetizer perspective, creating an appetizer plate so that there's not a bunch of staff coming at you with trays of food, whether covered with a dome or not. They're creating small plates so that the guest gets to get the full experience of all the appetizers. So they're going to be handing those. So we're just trying to do different things so that we can still have a fun guest experience, so they're not sacrificing the experience, that they're just getting a different experience, and it's going to still be interactive and still interesting. Food stations are obviously fun, as well as buffets. But again, the interaction with utensils and getting too close to the station and too close to people waiting in line or what have you, at a bare minimum, we're creating a barrier from the food station itself so that they can still see the action, and then be handed a plate or something at the end where there's a table where there's nothing there, and they can just then pick up it's a transition station. So somehow creating barriers, whether it's with plexi or with physical distance. So there's some options there, but still allowing folks to have that experience to see a chef either creating something, preparing something, carving something, blowing something up, what have you. We'll be able to still have those experiences, but yet still create physical distance or barriers. And same thing for buffets. I think the buffets, again, we're going to serve the buffets now. So, but still physically having a distance between the guest and the food, whether it's with plexi or again, physical distance, and then trying to either simplify or just make things a little bit easier from a buffet perspective, because when you add a server into the element, you know how people like to pick and choose, especially like think of a fajita buffet or something like that, where there's lots of condiments to select from. Trying to make those a little simpler or what have you, so that there aren't so many choices, or you just kind of give them information at the beginning of the line and let them know this is what we're doing and here's the menu and this is how we're plating it up, so that it almost feels like more like a plated experience rather than just create a big pile of food on your plate. So
I can kind of speak to that too, Leslie, if I can interject.
Absolutely.
We've done a couple of taco bars in the last couple of weeks, and with all of the toppings and such, we've just put a sample of every topping in a little boat, so that as the guest goes down the line, we are creating the taco for them with the meat, and then at the end, they just get a boat with all of the toppings, and then they can take it back to their table and make up whatever they want. So it's not slowing down the line, and that's worked really well.
That's beautiful. Love it. See, all our caterers are getting all creative and we're sharing ideas. So let's see. So there's a question from Melissa, if you're on the line, it says buffets. How and if caterers are changing their pricing due to the way that food service is changing? From our perspective, we've been visiting again with all of our clients, and we're going through their what they had originally planned as their experience. And to the extent that we highly unrecommend certain experiences, then to the extent if we're having to add folks to make the new experience happen, we're talking to them about that. And in many cases, our clients' guest counts are not increasing. They're actually potentially slightly decreasing. So there's usually a few dollars left to make sure that we can add the appropriate level of staff to make things like that happen. But so I would say, yes, caterers are doing some price adjustments, obviously with their client's consent. I do know that some of the caterers, the other Kristen Stevens mentioned that they are adding some sort of a small surcharge just for the additional things that we are all providing to for our staff or for the experience for all of their guests. So like, we're having to wear masks and have sanitizers and do all these different things for our guests' safety. So they're adding a very small surcharge per client. Melissa, are you on?
Melissa is not on here.
Okay, cool. Well, it was a good question. Let's see, Lauren Kaplan asked, top things to keep in mind for once hybrid events are allowed. So I assume she's kind of speaking to the corporate experience, is that correct? And I know Luis is on, I don't know if Lauren is, but, and it says, what is not already being talked about that should be something to consider or keep in mind? From a hybrid perspective, I assume that what we're talking about is having some people in a space and then maybe having people on screen or on camera and having some of the interaction that way. I mean, I don't know how that relates to food in particular. So unless, Luis, do you have anything to add to that question? Okay.
I don't think Louis.
We will move on.
But, Lauren definitely is. So. If you
Oh, Lauren's on?
Yes.
Oh, Lauren, do you have?
Yeah, I think I was more referring to like kind of that experience, of having like that hybrid of in-person experience versus that virtual, and just things to like keep in mind, not only for just safety, but for the overall experience.
But not necessarily related to food.
It could be. It's just things like so as a team, we're talking a lot about just different like safety measures, especially for in person, and also being able to work with different vendors, just to kind of align on those safety procedures. But I just didn't know if you had anything else, to add to that so I can share with the team.
Well, so definitely when we get the document prettied up and we can send it out. So like I said, we've got all these things in our document. So from our perspective, from a caterer's perspective, we're going to be doing all the things that we can do for our own staff. So temperature checks and checking all the things, just like if you were going to go to a doctor or, they ask you all the good questions. Hand washing stations and hand sanitizing stations for all of our staff. We're looking to our venues to provide appropriate things at the venue and to ask certain things of their other vendors that are coming on property. But we're asking our venues to provide the appropriate safety measures from a bathroom perspective and sanitizing stations for their guests to be using, and maybe some, appropriately, signage and things like that. Many of the venues that I've been speaking with say that they will have these things in place, but I've also heard from some of our caterers that say that some venues are not so excited to be doing some of these things. So that's a little concerning to all of us. But from an interaction with the guests, I feel like the biggest wild card is the guests, the people who are in attendance. That's the wild card. How they want to behave and how they want to interact with folks, whether it be a wedding or social event or a corporate event. That's the wild card. How do you set the table for them? How do you get them to interact in an appropriate fashion to keep all of the guests safe, and in turn also all the vendors that are helping support the event safe? From a food perspective, and this is not the virtual part of it, but from a food perspective, we're doing all the things that we believe are appropriate, keeping people from being able to touch food, handle food so that it's in the professionals' hands. And from that perspective, that's a big part of what we're trying to do. And then the creativity comes into play. Should we want to, start doing cool things, which I think all of us want to do. We want to do things safely, but we want to do it fun and cool. So I think this is really putting the challenge to us, as well as our event planners, to work in a collaborative fashion to say, okay, this is our new situation. This is our event. It is a virtual hybrid event. And how do we create some visuals for our folks that are on screen, that are watching through the screens? And how do we, also have some fun with the folks that are in person? And I think you can do some of that. I don't know how much of it would be related to food, but certainly I think that's the challenge. And I think the collaboration, is really important now with event planners for weddings, event planners for social events and corporate events. I really think the collaboration, it's always been there from our perspective with a lot of our event planners, but I think every event planner really now needs to not just kind of plan in their bubble. They need to plan with their clients as well as their catering staff, their catering folks, and then their other vendors, quite frankly, so that they're not left out. I don't think that's an amazing answer, but that's all I've got at this moment, Lauren.
Thank you.
And the other two Kristens, and I think we've got maybe some other caterers on there that might be able to speak to it now. Or I know Kristen Stacy is going to be dropping off here in a few minutes, but if there's anything you have to add, either Kristen. Okay.
No, I whatever you said is great.
Thank you, girl. I love my support system.
Yeah, Leslie.
Hey. Reagan had a question about how people are handling dance floors and buffets. Hopefully I've addressed the buffets. And as far as the dance floors, we're not in the policing job. That's a venue, client, planner, in my opinion, discussion. And quite frankly, again, wild card. I feel like the guests are the biggest wild card of this whole thing, because they are going to do what they want to do. And the clients, want to do what they've envisioned. So I think that's really where the planners and the venues, whatever their guidelines and whatever their creativity, I think we were talking before we got finished started getting on this call, that maybe there's cool ways to have many dance floors, have different pockets of dance floors in different spaces. So I think that's a cool thing you can do. I think adding some lighting and some cool shenanigans there. You can kind of really make some fun things happen with dance floors perhaps. So, but we're going to stay focused on the food situation. Vanessa, you had a question about what would you do if you didn't have a coordinator for your upcoming post-COVID event? And I wish it was post-COVID. Come on, people, let's get there. And the venue is not helping out with disinfecting high touch point areas. How are you keeping your staff safe? Well, first, I think all the caterers we were talking about, and hopefully any other caterers that want to jump on, and Vanessa, you come on, let's go. You can jump on our wagon here. I think we need to have those conversations, especially at the walkthroughs. You know, hopefully the walkthroughs are not happening 6 months before, but maybe more like 4 or 5 weeks before the event. Give them this document and tell them, look, this is what all the best venues and planners are doing in the market, and this is what the caterers are hoping the venues will be doing, and how can we do this? To the extent that they say that's not in our wheelhouse, that's not what we're going to do. You can offer to your planners and your clients that there are certain things that the caterers can do. Obviously, we have arms and legs, and for a cost, we can do additional services. If they feel like that if the client feels like they need to have a bathroom attendant, if they feel like they need to have more sanitation stations throughout the venue, not just in the back of house or at the bar, where they're coming into contact with drinks and beverages and things like that, the guests at least. I mean, we can offer for a cost to provide those things. So I think that it's in the caterer's best interest. We have usually the most number of folks on property besides the client and their guests, and we have a significant amount of exposure that we want to protect. We want to protect our people. I mean, we want to keep everybody safe and happy, but we can't control what everybody else does. We can only hope that they do the right thing, as I do everybody in the whole city and state and country. But we can highly encourage our planners and our clients that if the venue is not going to pony up, that we can do so for a cost. Let's see. Amy Miner, you asked, what are the risks? I'm assuming you're asking what are the risks of not doing business as normal pre-COVID? And I think that with all things, when caterers, I'm going to speak to it from a caterer's perspective, if we are not operating in a safe fashion and we have one event where things become identified that unhealthy practices were performed or not, and things snowballed from a specific event, I think that's the biggest risk. People getting sick is the biggest risk to a caterer, in my opinion. Kristen, you agree? Okay. I see you shaking your head, so I'm going with that.
No, absolutely. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I absolutely agree. We were on one of our caterers calls. I was talking about one of our events that we just had where the client just did not want to take any measures that we were really telling them they had to take for us to cater the wedding. They didn't want to just seat a certain number of people at a table. They didn't want a social distance. They didn't want to do anything that we suggested. And actually, when we went there for the wedding day, their poor grandmother who had traveled in from Minnesota was the only one wearing a mask and was shamed into taking off her mask because she was ruining the pictures. So, I mean, it's the biggest thing that we're trying to combat right now is the vision that these people have for what their wedding is supposed to look like in their eyes and what they're actually dealing with. And we are being put in a position and we're going into it saying, these are the rules that we're going to follow, and I'm not going to be sacrificing the health of my team and the people that I have been put in a position to protect, or the integrity of my company, because you are making the decisions that you are going to make. So either you do it my way or you can find another caterer.
Fair enough, because I mean, as all of you all know, if you are not in catering, I mean, I know the planners have suffered significantly, but from a catering perspective, we have suffered I'm going to put like our group of caterers, I would say in the multi-millions of dollars over the last 4 months. And we are not going to let our companies go down because we don't know how to follow health guidelines and have something associated with an event that we were at, and or have all of our staff whom we rely on to perform these fabulous events that all you guys have come to know and love, be off because they're sick and they're having to, tend to themselves. So hopefully people will appreciate that. I think what our hope is that the venues and the planners will come hold hands with us when we get the opportunity to start sharing this with everybody, in the one-on-one conversations that we're having with our venues and our planners, that they will appreciate what we're trying to do, that we're trying to set the standard that we want Austin's events industry to move forward in a healthy way and continue to get stronger and stronger. And, I feel like a lot of creativity is going to come out of some of these things that we're all going to be doing to add fun rather than just rather than just it all being a negative, like, oh my gosh, you're gonna have masks on. Well, yeah, we're gonna have masks on. I've seen some really cute pictures of people with masks with the, little cute little things on their faces, or I know there's a lot of us that are branding our masks and things like that. So, I mean, we're just trying to do what we can do, and so that we can all survive in a healthy way. So.
Well, and I think the one thing that I'm just scared to death about because of how reckless people are being is that if somebody does come from an event that we've catered and does show up to be COVID positive, and then we have to self-quarantine for 14 days, and that affects our entire staff, well, then what happens to the events that we've got scheduled in the next 14 days? Who caters those weddings? So,
Yeah.
I mean, just one person showing up as positive from a wedding can completely devastate, tons of other people's weddings.
Yes.
And I don't think that those clients and those guests see it that way, that what the decisions that they're making at their event are actually affecting other events to come. And they could be ruining somebody else's wedding because they're being reckless.
Yes, absolutely. And as we've discussed, they want what they want what they've planned, they want their vision. And in this time, that's where I really, really, really believe that the event planners, whether they're the month of, day of, or the, full event planners, that I'm sorry, I got a little distracted, but that, they wanted what they wanted. And so we're hoping that the event planners will really help stand up and hold hands with the caterer and say, look, we're really trying to make this safe. And we really want y'all to have an amazing time and move things forward in a positive way. Because nobody wants to get that phone call after the wedding that somebody tested positive. That would be horrifying.
Leslie, we do have some questions coming in on the chat.
Oh, good.
I'll hold until the end for those, or until you finish the questions on the.
Let me zip through these really quick. I'll quit rambling on so much and see what we can do.
No worries. Okay,
but that global question of what are the risks, I could talk for an hour on that. Okay, so then it says Taylor has a question: what to discuss with your client versus what not to discuss? Darn good question. I say, I mean, we've got these things that we've put down on our list from caterers to our planners and clients. It's like holding hand with the planner and having a sanitation plan with the hand washing stations and, hand sanitizers and even masks, fun masks available for guests who want to have it, and temperature checks if that's something that they feel like that they would like to incorporate. Having security on site because, as folks get more intoxicated, it becomes more difficult to control folks and keep them doing the right things. So having some security on site, table release to the extent that there are buffets so that, you're not creating these huge long lines, putting the lines on the thing for the 6-foot rule, but honestly, nobody really they just aren't caring enough. So again, but just trying to have fun with it so that you can create because I look for that stuff when I'm out, and I'm seeing it in certain environments like retail stores and so forth. So I'm looking for it. Some people will care. So we've got a nice list of things there for things from our clients. But I would say, you want to talk about what you need to do, as Kristen was just mentioning. It's like, these are the things we need to do so that we can continue to be here for not only you, but for the next wedding and the next wedding and the next social event and so forth. I, I always try to come to people with, like, if something's somewhat distasteful to somebody, but, you know, having at least an option of a way to correct the code. Some things are just like, we have to wear masks. Well, can we have masks that are cool? Yeah. If you want us to have something fun on our face, then we can make them more fun, but having an option to make it be a little bit more fun and creative. But I think that we have to discuss these things with our clients, because they're the ones who, if we just show up and start doing all these things, they're not going to be super happy about it if they weren't expecting it and knowing whys we're doing all these things. It says, with all that's going on, I've noticed oversharing our procedures can overwhelm and actually stress out the client. I agree. Again, have these even before your walkthrough, have a conversation. Like, we're talking to everybody for the next 6 months, talking about their menu design and how we can adjust it to be safe as of today's information. Everybody has been information changing rapidly from a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. So we've just been getting people prepared by talking about, if it were today, this is what we would suggest, and let's talk about it, so that they're not hearing it for the first time, you know, a week before their wedding. Stacy, excellent question. Is it the end of the buffet as we know it? And I would say yes, for a good long while. So I think I talked about all the ways we're trying to change buffets, basically have separation or visit, you know, like clear separation, you know, with a plexi or something like that. Where do we stand on buffets versus stations versus plated? I honestly, we had really good conversation. Oh, I forgot our arcade group is a part of our conversation as well. We had really good conversation, folks. From a catering perspective, I think Emily from Arcade made a really good point. Like, when we plate and serve a meal, we are actually touching more people closer. And so it was a really good point, because I was kind of like, oh, let's do plated so nobody has to touch anything. I think family style, and Kristen, if you are still on, if you want to pipe up about family style, where are you guys at with family style? Because you do a lot of it.
Yeah, we do a lot of family style. Right now, we are looking at really event by event. Is it really a feasible thing for us to do family style? Because we cannot let guests touch platters right now. So if they're going to be doing family style, it's us serving the food from the platter to the plate. If it's a small guest count and the client really just wants that feel, then we're going to do it. But we're only doing it with a very minimal number of people at a table, because I don't want my staff that close to a table full of 10 people.
Yeah.
So, and if it's not feasible, we are switching them to plated meals at no additional charge, just to make sure that everybody is safe. And there's still, and most people that choose family style choose it because they don't want a buffet.
Right.
So just switching them to plated is a pretty easy transition for most clients, at least what we have found so far, and they've been relatively understanding.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we personally don't love buffets, just from an overall look and feel, but sometimes that's a price point situation. So we've been trying to encourage folks to go from a buffet to either family style or more towards a plated, if they afford it. And again, because some of the budgets, the guest counts have decreased, they actually have a few dollars in their budget. And this is all saying if they haven't already lost money from moving their event date or venue. And we just had our next event, they had to change venues, and you know, so some people are losing some money. So there's definitely also budget consciousness. So that's nice that y'all are doing that at no cost, which I would do the same thing, because it's actually, we've got the right amount of staff for plated versus family style, which is usually about the same. So it's like, that's cool.
Yeah. Well, and so many, like, I know the question about staff had come up before. So many of the guest counts are going down. Some guest counts are even being cut in half. Well, if we've already quoted the client on, say, 12 servers for, you know, 180 or to 200 people, but now they're only having 100 people, well, we're just telling them, we're going to keep your staff where it is, because we have all of these extra measures that we're going through.
Yeah.
And so in that respect, it's not like we're adding something to their plate.
Right.
So that's been our experience so far.
Excellent. Brent, you asked how everyone has been affected plans and developments for the rest of the year, and getting back in the groove of events. So I think Kristen, I know, has already been starting to work on events. We are getting back in our group of our first events. I think our first thing was just making sure that we could get staff that wanted to work, given all the unemployment situations, and then people's, we don't know everybody's personal situations and who they have living in their homes and how they need to be taken care of and protecting folks as well. So we've got a really good situation with a lot of staff that want to work, and then advising them of all of the things pre getting on property, giving them all the guidelines, and then letting them know how we're going to be operating differently. And again, talking with all of our clients, advising them and adjusting things, especially for the closest ones, and then preemptively for the ones that are farther out, so that they're aware and know that things may need to change, but we're just keeping them in check until that 30-day mark, so that we know what they either do or do not have to do. And then they'll have better thoughts on their actual guest counts and things like that. But yeah, getting back in the groove of the events, it's going to be get your workout on, get those things to keep you cool, that sort of thing. Lisa Kazi had a question. What does catering look like in the new normal? I think I've pretty much addressed a lot of that. But catering has always had a lot of guidelines. We have a lot of things we have to follow. We all have health permits. We all have guidelines we have to follow. So it's not that we're going to be doing anything significantly different, except for gloves and masks, and then more frequent hand washing. But we've always been very vigilant about keeping things clean and sanitized, and people who are not well should not be working. I get super freaked out when I see anybody who's like sniffing and sneezing. It's like, you've got to go. So, and I think that that's the way we've all operated. So these are just these are just hyper vigilant because of all the guidelines. But I think that the way we all operate normally is safe. We keep people from getting any other kinds of viral things. And so our big goal is to keep ourselves healthy and our staff healthy. And in turn, we hope that will also keep our guests and clients happy and healthy. And I can't pronounce your name, Adesuwa, I apologize. What are the new policies and best practices for grazing tables and pastry displays? I think that I've hopefully addressed that a little bit as well, but grazing tables, I would say, are not going to be happening for a good long while. But again, just adding a server and kind of changing and adjusting a little bit of that. You can still have them, but it's like the guests won't be grazing. Maybe we've got staff that are helping pre-graze for them, assisting with that. Yeah, and pastry displays. And whenever possible, also, I think some of the other options have been pre-packaging, cute packaging, putting, pastry displays, put like an assortment like Kristen was doing with the appetizers, putting in a little assortment on a tray or putting it in a little box and making it be a here you go kind of situation. So working with your clients and your planners and adjusting to make things easier or cool or interesting so that they don't feel like it's a negative. That's our goal. It's not, we want it to be a positive. Let's see. Kristen Stevens is asking, how are we all handling events that have been postponed for the second time? Well, one by one. It's starting to happen for us as well. So we've already had a couple that have postponed to like July and August, and they're already wanting to postpone to like next May or next July or August or September. So to the extent that people want to do that, God bless them. And it's like once we changed, our contracts changed, as soon as people started canceling for the March, April, May, when we were in stay-at-home guidelines, we changed our contract. And so everybody who's getting, who had to move, we released them from that contract, and then we put them into a new contract with a few more current learnings from our current world. So we just add a few more things that we can actually now release people from their event much easier and move them forward. And there's more verbiage and guidelines around it. So yeah, it's painful to watch, but if people don't want to have their event for the X, Y, and Z reason, it's super hard to keep them into that situation and make an unhappy client caterer relationship. So I know that most of us have said that we're taking things one by one and that we're working with everybody within the realms of our own contracts. Yeah, so expectations of our venues. We do hope that most of our venues will take a careful and considerate listen to the things that we're hoping that they're going to do, that they're also listening to what the city, state, and federal governments are asking folks to do to be safe and protect the public. Okay, so questions from the pack.
Yes. Okay. So someone asked, does anyone else have a concern about cross-contamination with glove wearing causing a false sense of safety?
I know particularly that Kristen Stevens and myself definitely have an issue with it. I have an issue with it pre-COVID. The use of glove wearing is bad. People don't know how to do it well. Caterers should know how to do it well. Temporary staff maybe don't necessarily always know how to do it as well as people who are literally working in a kitchen. But people, like, for example, a bartender who maybe isn't a chef, doesn't work in a kitchen, cutting some bar fruit, then touching a glass, then touching the table, then touching a door, and keeping the gloves on. That is entirely gross. So yeah, so training everyone how to properly use gloves is definitely going to be on our list of things that when we're having conversations with our staff. If I see staff walking around and opening and closing doors and then going and bussing plates, I'm fine with that. That's okay. Do they need to change their gloves if they were going to go pass food? Absolutely. In fact, several of us talked about having different staff for bussing versus for passing. So like in cocktail reception time, if we are going to be having anything on a tray, hopefully domed or somehow protected so that other guests, when they're in our space. But if we're physically providing food to somebody else and then we turn around when our plate tray's empty, we're not going to go start bussing, right? So we're gonna have a different group of people so that they are separately, picking up dirties, which have been touched by other guests now, and then they're going to take those dirties to our back of house, and they can stay on that task. They don't necessarily have to change gloves, and that would be appropriate as long as they're not touching food or anything that a guest would then use to drink or eat from. So they stay on task. It gets a little bit more different when we're in the dinner service. So then we're going to have folks, again, we're going to be potentially serving a family style or a plated dinner, hopefully. And then we're going to have people being that are going to be bussing. So we're going to try to keep those teams separate so that the use of gloves will be in a zone. So the bussers can keep their gloves on, touch dirty things, potentially touch door handles or what have you. As much as possible, we're going to try to keep doors open if we can, but in many cases, you want to keep certain environments behind the scenes. So, but yeah, gloves can be really gross.
And someone mentioned maybe using different colored gloves too.
That's an excellent choice. Yeah, I would definitely say, yeah, so there's the blacks, there's the blues, there's the clears. I think those are an excellent way to keep things so that you know who's supposed to be doing what. I love that. I'm going to add that to my list. Thank you.
We had on the same route as like COVID safety, someone's asking about how are your staff being educated to follow the COVID safety rules. They were thinking of creating an FAQ sheet requiring staff to pass around. Are you experiencing pushback from your staff on the COVID training? Things maybe like, is there software y'all are using, or are you just doing an in-person meeting on the COVID safety?
Yeah, we're going to provide information. And Kristen, the Kristens that have already started having events, you can pipe up as well. But the information is being shared electronically before the events, and then we're going to have like a COVID police dog as well. So not the event manager, but somebody that's just the watchdog at the event. So it's kind of like a separate job.
And that's a part of your team. You're providing
Yes.
that. Okay.
Yes, for our staff.
We've assigned as well, like every for every shift, we assign like a safety coordinator that's on the floor and then a safety coordinator in the kitchen. And they're responsible for just making sure that everyone is washing their hands, like every 30 minutes, they're changing out their gloves every time they leave the busing. You know, we have all this whole list of things that we go through them each event. So they've all heard it now numerous times because we have a pretty small core staff, but regardless, we go through it every single time, and then we assign those safety coordinators that are in charge of just keeping everybody on task and making sure that the high traffic surfaces are getting wiped down, and you know, things like that. So and then of course we also do we call them the day before and go through the screening, and they get temped on site as soon as they arrive.
Excellent.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. Oh, are you having staffing issues? I think y'all both said your core group came back, no problem. But someone, I guess, when you need temporary staff, are you having issues getting staff at all? Someone asked.
Kristen, how you doing on that?
I mean, you know, a good portion of my core crew came back, but I say that, but I mean, I say that but there's also a good number of them that aren't comfortable yet. So, I mean, we are finding, you know, struggling a little bit. We happen to have 2 seated dinners on the same night. And so that, you know, those require the most amount of staff. So, you know, we had to actually, you know, call in a temp company for that night. Unfortunately, you know, we tried not to, but, you know, there's nothing we could do because we just did not have enough staff to cover. So that was, you know, for us is like, ugh, you know, hate doing that. Because again, I just want to make sure that my staff all are very trained and know exactly how they should be handling, you know, handling our events and handling, you know, our guests and making sure that everyone's safe.
Awesome. Let's see. We've got, oh, are you making clients or guests sign waivers? Someone asked.
I've had this conversation. I actually call my attorney on that as well, because there are a few venues that are having their clients and all guests and all vendor staff sign a waiver, releasing them. And so I asked my attorney, I said, so should we do the same? And our guidance was, you can, not highly enforceable, and very difficult to track, you know, the where. So we carry a boat ton of liability insurance, and we will be following all of the guidance and the guidelines for protection. So similar to like serving alcohol at a bar, the protection comes from following the appropriate procedures, having them documented, having people following them, having managers on property, and now we're going to have some extra people watching certain things. So in that same spirit, we're going to be doing the same thing. So to the extent that any of our staff were to become ill by being at an event where there's documented folks that have gotten the COVID, it's just like this trail of tears. That's like, what do you do with that? And where do you go with that? So we're just, you know, it's a risk situation. It's not that that's a right or a wrong answer to do it or not do it. But we are not going to be doing it. Kristen, where are you guys at?
We're not. It's just, what I understand with talking with fellow people, it's not enforceable. There's no way to track it. And so we're not doing that.
Yeah.
We're not doing it either. That's, our lawyer said the same thing. Like, just not, you can't figure out where they got it. You can't prove it, you know?
Yeah. Somebody could have gotten it, but they could have, you know, somebody could have it, and you may be exposed to that person, but you also might have been exposed to somebody 7 to 10 days prior to that. So
exactly.
Good Lord.
So let's see. Someone, okay. So from the venue perspective, the Bullock will be implementing a contract amendment for clients to sign. Okay, so the Bullock is providing, so they are a venue that's providing a waiver, I guess. So, and I think Camp Lucy also is doing waivers and all of the WIM stuff.
And Mame-san. Yeah, Mame-san is doing it as well.
Okay, let's see. So how many people are you safely seating at tables, 60-inch, 72-inch, etc.?
I
Well,
think Kristen answered that.
Yeah.
You know, we're suggesting 6 at a 60-inch and 8 at a 72-inch. And I haven't had any clients go against that.
Yeah.
So far.
Awesome. Let's see. Oh, I guess this is a question about past appetizers. Do the servers pass it to guests, or do the guests grab off a tray? So like, how are you handling past apps if guests choose to want that? Are you plating the app, or how are you doing that?
I might pop in. I think we're pretty split on that, to be honest. I know Kristen Stacy is having her staff hand them to the guests, and so the guests aren't touching, make sure they're not touching the tray.
Mhm.
I just don't want my staff to even get that close to the guests and have that hand contact with the guests personally. So we are just making sure that each appetizer is in like its own little vessel, like either a little paper boat or like a bamboo boat or something where they can easily take it, or it's skewered where they can easily take it and it's not and not touch the tray, just so that we don't have to get that close and possibly end up touching the guests ourselves.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then, yeah. So everybody, all the caterers I've ever talked to have been saying the same thing. And then just, yeah. So physical spacing so that like the things aren't so close that when they come in to reach for something.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, I know that there's this domes, people are talking about domes or plexi or things to cover so that like, because when we're talking, it's all about the stuff and the things coming out of our mouth. And that spray, so like, even if you lift a dome, I don't know, the whole thing just kind of is potentially nerve wracking just to think about it. So if you've got, even if you have a dome and then you have a tray, and if the guest is lifting something off, or if we don't have a dome and we're lifting something off, I mean, the whole thing is just kind of.
We tried the tray, we tried the domes, and what I found, again, for us, it was just so much to manage, like that we ended up tipping the tray and the apps were sliding. And so we got rid of the domes. We tried it because we did want to try to see if we could, have that extra layer of protection, but I didn't find that it worked very well.
Awesome. We did have a question just come in about, is going green going out the window? So with all the gloves and, things, are we still, going green, I guess.
Hey, but listen, we aren't going to have the straws, or if we have the straws, they're the kind that aren't going to kill the turtles. So we're doing that for sure. I mean, so there are certain aspects that are, the gloves are kind of, there's a zillion, let's be clear, there's a zillion gloves going on this planet in the food environment anyway. But yeah, I would say that gloves from all aspects, not just food service and not just catering service, but yeah, gloves are an issue. But I would say that all the normal practices that we've come to know and love, I don't think they're going out the window. I think there may be more use of single-use situations. So for clients, I mean, I've never really been a big proponent of having a disposable kind of environment, for a wedding. But if we do have one, and if it works because of budget constraints now, or safety constraints, everything that we use is going to be compostable and that sort of thing. So we're not going to go, full on plastic, but we have a lot of really pretty compostable situations, or renewable resources like the bamboos and the pressed leaves and things like that. So I would say no, it's not going to go out the window.
Mm-hmm.
But certain things like the gloves, poor gloves. Yeah.
Awesome. And then we had people are asking about events being moved outside. So are you getting pushback from clients to move events outside? And then another question was on the opposite spectrum, but for outdoor events, how are you implementing temperature checks with non-contact thermometers? We found it hard to gauge the accuracy once staff warheads are outside. So I guess the first question being, are you getting pushback from clients moving events outside? Granted, I don't know if you have anything to say about that or not as caterers. But then if you are doing multiple temperature checks throughout the event, if they're outside, how are you gauging if it's correct or not?
Kristen, are you doing multiple temperature checks or just upon arrival?
We are just doing it upon arrival.
Yeah, so I'm with you on the whole. If you're hot and you've been out and trying to do a second temperature check throughout the day, we're not going to do that either. We're going to do it upon arrival. We're going to ask them if they've been in contact with anybody that's been known to have contracted COVID-19 or experiencing any of the the known illness things like coughing and things like that. So we're not going to be doing the second temperature check. So that's probably not going to come into play for many of us. As the venues that are being hyper vigilant, I don't think they're going to be doing second temperature checks either for their guests. So moving the events outside, I don't know that really is usually the conversation they have with us. I think that's really more client and planner, and I think it would be driven by if they want to have more people come to their event. So
right, definitely. Are there certain things that you as a caterer will no longer do at the venue, even if it has always been required? For example, setting up tables and chairs and flipping.
We are not changing anything no, I mean, we're not going to do anything differently as far as like, we'll do setup and tear down and flips and things like that. What we all talked about was, if a venue is asking us to do certain things to their venue related items, such as cleaning their chairs, like that, I think we've all kind of agreed that the conversation is with our venue folks that venues need to take care of what they sell and we will take care of what we sell.
Awesome. Okay, great. I mean, that's all the questions on the chat. If anybody else has more questions, we technically have about 30 minutes left, but if you had anything else to say, Leslie, or we can end early, whatever y'all are feeling.
Yeah, is there anything else that's out there burning? Hey, Art, I see you up there. How you doing, sir? How y'all doing down in San Antonio?
It's slow, just like everywhere else. I think we had a nice, larger event last week. And we have a wedding this Saturday, just trying to feed the pipeline so we could have some events after summer. But I mean, we're usually summer anyway.
Art's with the Rosemary's Catering. So tell me, so with that larger event, was there anything interesting that is surprising or not surprising?
Yeah, I'd say only about 10% of the guests were wearing their masks. This was an affluent crowd, and they were all hugging and kissing and missing on each other.
Love it. So was it a plated meal or a reception or what was it?
Stations, we had a plexiglass. So what we do is we have an attendant behind it. So the plexiglass allows them all to see what they would normally see. And then we usually composed bamboo plate or cone or whatever it is.
Okay, excellent. And how are you handling like any other beverages? Were all beverages coming out of a bar or an attended?
Yeah, we have plexiglass on everything. We have frames with plexiglass, standalones. I mean, we have our own little wood shop and everything. So we fabricate all these different things, but nothing is self-serve. Everything was undisposable. Everything's handed to the guests, so there's no interaction between anybody. Although they were all over each other.
Was it a wedding?
It was not. It was a social event. Again, affluent crowd. It was a fundraiser.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, you got to get all up in their faces so that they can raise that money. Well,
questions come in actually.
Yeah, no problem.
So someone's saying, what if they say yes to have been in contact with somebody who was sick? Then what?
As far as our staff?
Yeah, I think so.
We personally, Crave will not have them on property.
Yep, I believe it. And I guess you just tell them, sorry, you can't come to work. We're having a lot of the things that we're dealing with is trying to teach our staff what they do outside of work now affects what they do if they are able to work. So that's been a really hard conversation with like 21-year-olds and 22-year-olds who just want to go party.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, literally, it's definitely a conversation. So our stance is we can't control what you do in your personal life, but we can control if you can come to work for us. So our guidelines are that if you have been in contact or with a known COVID-19 person and you have not been self-quarantined for 14 days, then you are not able to work for us until self-quarantine for 14 days. And so just as if they said that they have a fever or if they've had a cough, they can't come work for us either. So it's being in contact with somebody that has it, you cannot come work for us.
Yeah.
How are you handling that?
Yeah, us?
Oh no, Kristen. Oh,
just left.
Or yeah. Are you? Yeah. What are you guys doing? Are you?
Same thing. We're just trying to. I mean, we've had Zoom meetings because we're gearing up for June, and it's been, please, please, when you go to the river or what? Because we're in San Marcos, so we've got the river, which I feel like is just a cesspool at this point. And I'm just like, please. 6 feet apart, like wear a mask if you can. I know you're outside. It's just so hard though
it's tough.
It's part of our community, so it's hard to regulate that. But yeah, I mean, temperature checks are required. So if you feel sick or you don't pass those checks, then yeah, you can't work.
Yeah, I know it's tough. It's like this is we're all at ground zero. Every single one of us are at ground zero. It's like it can start. It's like so quickly, and when the staff are hanging out, a lot of them are friends with each other too. So the staff that work for us. So, yeah,
that's even scarier. Yeah. Someone asked for corporate events, are box lunches replacing buffets, or are you just switching to servers at the buffets?
I think both. I think we've experienced where the folks want quickness. So when quickness is in hand, then we're doing a bento box or a box lunch or something that's fun and cool and interesting. You can do warm pickup boxes as well as or as we were talking about, just for like a social event, what have you, to doing a buffet. Sometimes if they really need the time, the box is the way to go. Mm-hmm. Really good. But yeah, they can do cold or warm boxes. So have fun with it.
Awesome. And then for anyone who did an event this past weekend, were there kids in attendance? Someone asked. So I guess Art or Kristen, but I think Kristen headed out. So
both Kristens are gone?
Uh-huh.
Okay, cool. Art, have you done any events where kids are coming?
No, we have a wedding this Saturday. I'm not sure if there's going to be kids or not. Sonia might have an answer. It's her wedding.
Hey, Sonia.
Oh, Sonia. Oh.
The wedding will have 4 kids on Saturday.
Oh, I can't wait.
and it's a buffet that we're serving.
Okay.
The good news is it's 150 people in a space that sits 600. So I'm feeling good about the space between everybody.
Excellent.
Tables of 6.
I'm just glad we're getting to talk about people going to work again. I'm super excited by that. That's like crazy. I wasn't sure that was going to start happening. So
I know.
Soon.
Let's see. Anybody else have any other questions, or did I miss any questions that people are burning to know the answer? You can unmute yourself or put it in the chat. Let's see. Lori said they're going to have, or no, Jonathan said they're having airport style temperature scanners. I guess they don't touch or something. I'm not sure. Yeah.
They're scanning temperatures at the airports now. Yeah, I haven't been close to an airport, so I would let Jonathan to elaborate on that.
So the temperature style airport checker is basically so the average non-contact temperature scans. They're not super accurate, at least to the degree where they need to be. I guess for purposes like they're like 2 degrees off. So those airport ones are like 0.2 degrees in terms of accuracy. And then, and so it's just as they're coming in, they're going to get scanned kind of like a metal detector. And then from my understanding with the planner we're working with is the planner's gonna have security on site that's gonna basically enforce entry. Because if the alarm goes off saying they're too high of a temperature, they need to either go through a recheck or they're gonna do some other scan. We haven't really worked it out. It's a event in the fall, but that's kind of like my understanding right now, because like everyone's worried is if your staff gets sick from some guest and suddenly you're out of staff for the next 14 days,
Yep.
what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I think that's a really hard place to be as a business owner. So yeah, that's kind of like the whole impetus of us getting it, just in case. And we might bring it to some events here and there, just depending on the density of the events, if we're like really scared about it.
And so who's providing it? The planner or the client, or paying for it, or is it something?
So it's actually in our rental inventory.
Okay.
The client will be the person that ends up paying for it. I think the planner pitched it to the client under their own package. So we're just doing it as a white label third party person.
Got it. So you've already invested in these?
Yeah, we only have one right now. They're a little on the pricier side.
Is it something that's like, is it handheld or where?
No, it's like a whole station. So it's like you'll have a staff that's trained to monitor it, and you have a whole like computer setup with it.
That is super cool to know. Corporate event planners and maybe even some large social events and things like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I guess go to Booth Easy for your temperature check.
No kidding.
It's just a random thing we picked up to protect us, really.
Yeah, but I get it.
Yeah, no doubt.
Someone asked, do y'all know the current capacity rules for events currently right now? Because as we know, they've all been changing so much.
I don't know that they've changed from 50%. But I could be wrong. Does anybody else know?
Mayor Adler, go ahead.
I was going to say it's still at 50%. Outdoor spaces aren't limited to a max capacity.
Yeah.
Can everyone hear me?
San Antonio is 50% for indoor and 100% for outdoor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there you go. Awesome. Well, if there is no more questions from Ms. Leslie,
I'll just say one thing real quick, actually.
Yeah.
I was just going to say I've been at work for 3 weeks now, and it's just something to keep in mind that a lot of people who are out there who really just are partying and getting drunk don't care, or they think that this is a hoax still, or that, they've got a lot of things to say. So continuously to me as a DJ, people are coming up and, telling me, this isn't happening, going for the handshake and the high five, and remember to treat it my point is treat it like it's offensive driving. Take care of yourself, make sure that people don't ruin you. But a lot of the times it's just a lot of different opinions you're going to hear out there for sure in the next 3 weeks. But that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. Are DJs wearing their masks?
Well, luckily for us, we get to put a little barrier around our 6 foot little thing. But as far as I've seen, half of the DJs are wearing them, half of them aren't. And then a lot of them aren't honestly even going back because they've got underlying conditions. So it kind of just boils down to that.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did see something interesting. DJs doing like a sign that says text me your request, so that people aren't coming up, or just putting signs that say 6 feet away from me, do not approach, just to help mitigate.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
That is a great idea. And they love to text, so go Tiger.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, did you have any final words? Otherwise, we will bid you adieu.
I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all so much. And let's just all work together and try to get our venues and our planners to be cognizant that we're all really being careful with our businesses and that we're trying to be there for the long haul.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Leslie. And we will be sending out, we did record this. So we will be sending out a link of the recording. And we will also send out the document, I think, that Leslie was talking about the requirements or the mitigations y'all are making for COVID.
Yeah. So we'll definitely get it over to you soon.
But thank you so much.
Oh, thank y'all very much. Take care.